as Rena said, we've got two people who, in a sense, are not just dealing with bots, I guess, but dealing with this new environment where journalism operates in a very strange sphere where you're not just dealing with an audience, you're not just dealing with a public, you're not just dealing with competing journalists, but you're also dealing with either state-sponsored or state-related people who are messaging often directly against journalists, trying to disrupt what they do directly, and Jessica's got experience of that, but also trying to sort of create content in what academics call the public sphere that seeks to fill that space with a particular kind of information or misinformation. And so particularly topical, I guess, has been around Russia, because we've seen a whole sort of gamut of media activity emanating from Russia, some directly related to the Kremlin, some semi-autonomous, and of course it's been terribly important because Russia is terribly important, and as we saw in Ukraine and the Crimea and so on, that this has a direct relationship to real and quite critical geopolitical events. But we're going to start off by getting Jessikka and Peter to explain a little bit about their experience, a little bit of exchange of views, and obviously we'd love to hear, because I know there are some people in the audience who've got particular interest in this topic and Russia in particular, so get a chance for you to interact as well. Jessikka, would you like to kick off and explain what happened to you? You were mad enough to start doing journalism about trolls.
Yeah, it all started in September 2014 when I started a crowdsourced investigation of what was then the latest trend in Russian information warfare, the trolls that are anonymous, aggressive, and that share aggressive pro-Kremlin propaganda online, so on social media and on blogs. So I asked in one article Finnish audiences' experiences and information about these troll activities and troll attacks in different kind of social media and internet forums. And I wanted to know how they act, what kind of disinformation do they share, and how have Finnish audience reacted to these attacks. Well, I immediately became a target myself. So many pro-Kremlin propagandists, who are just actual people operating in international information space, started to spread disinformation about me, and really serious claims, saying, for example, that I am doing cooperation with foreign intel services and NATO, and that I'm even doing crimes with my article, like I'm building some kind of illegal registry of Putin supporters in Finland. And since then, my work and even my person has been so fiercely just intimidated, and I have received so much trolling from people and trolls who believe in these lies that are spread about me. But still I have kept on investigating the topic, and my stories, first I went to Troll Factory in St. Petersburg, where there is an actual house where hundreds of people are paid to write pro-Kremlin comments everywhere online, and who are very secretive. They don't want to talk anything about their work, and they are forbid to speak, and they were terrified to see a Finnish journalist there asking questions. But we did really thorough investigations from there. And then I also, simultaneously, as I was trolled and harassed, which is still ongoing. I got really good information from Finnish audience about these troll attacks, and I made like a series of articles in Finnish, English, and Russian languages about this phenomenon and how it influences Finnish public opinion. And in my investigation, I found out that this propaganda trolling had serious impacts on Finnish public opinion, online discussions, such as many people had lost contact of what is true and what is not true, for example, in the Ukraine war and Ukrainian crisis, because trolls were spreading so much falsified data and information. And also some people had been silenced because they had voiced out their opinions about Russia or Russia's political actions online, and after that become target of troll attack. So also one very serious thing was that some Finnish people had been turned into propagandists themselves because they had been first subjected to propaganda online. So they had kind of become troll themselves. So this is about my investigation, what happened to me, and if you want to know some details about how I've been trolled, you can find my articles online. They're also in English, my year as pro-Russia troll magnet, and I will also be happy to answer any questions. And just so that you know, my harassing is now investigated by the police because it's so serious. Thank you.
Just want to pick up on a couple of things there. Firstly, on the actual sort of personal thing, you obviously kept going, relentlessly. Can you just describe, I mean, in the previous panel, I think Raphael talked about the demotivating effect, which is a kind of, sounds quite gentle if you're being demotivated. What kind of impact did it have on you personally and professionally? And how did you deal with that?
Well, when I noticed that such aggressive campaigning had been launched against me, I was just publishing everything on my Facebook and told that, oh, look what they're writing about me. Okay, so I was planning to make one story about trolls, but this seems to be so serious topic that I will do many stories about this, because that just showed me how important topic this is, and that this really needs to be thoroughly investigated. But of course, sometimes when troll activists has, for example, dug some serious things about me, and because trolls started to investigate me, and then publishing their so-called investigation along with very horrible disinformation everywhere on internet, like in English and Finnish and Russian language, and also just plain lies. I have been just like very scared and terrified, but because I get so much support from Finnish audience, it helped me to get going. And it was really interesting to notice already in the beginning that this is not against me personally, even though it feels like it, but it's against my work, and it's designed to make me stop and to designed to silence me. So I could react it to that way, but of course, it's sometimes just so disgusting.
I mean, did you find that you were avoiding, being online, avoiding social media because of that, or?
No, not really, no.
You just kept going. And tell me more about the types of trolls. You mentioned the troll factory, but what's the sort of range of people? Some are organised and very deliberate. Were there other categories of people participating in this?
Well, yes, there is this professional troll factory where they say that. Or when they're recruiting people, they don't say that they recruit trolls, but they recruit social media like managers and graphic designers and whatever, but still they work there as trolls. And this troll name is invented by the Russian journalists who went there to investigate it first. But yeah, so there are those, but of course trolling also comes from other sources, like for example, the actions of Russian embassy in Finland is very trolling, and I found out that they had been trolling like on Twitter and on Facebook, spreading disinformation, blocking critical journalists who are commenting about Russia actions, also spreading like photos of corpses and just like so aggressive information there, and also blocking critical people who are commenting their Facebook page. So that's also one source. But then there are also a kind of like a network of pro-Kremlin propagandists who are very active and who are connected to Kremlin also, at least in very, like, at least they tell about that in their blogs. And then they are very persistent in just like producing fake information almost about everyone in Finland who is talking about Russia or bringing its actions up to the daylight.
Yeah.
So there are different actors, and one point is that they want to recruit just like normal people to participate in their actions.
Yeah, I mean, and this is sort of a semantic point, but I'm thinking about the sort of job description for a troll factory worker. You know, you say in a sense they advertise for a social media manager or whatever, and then I suppose after day 5 they realise that they're being asked to target somebody or something. But because some people, this is sort of devil's advocate if you like, some people say, what's the difference though between somebody who just disagrees with you strongly? Perhaps they may be, you know, rude, they may be offensive, but you know, what's the difference between a troll and just somebody who, you know, really takes a different ideological point of view? You know, that on the open internet people are supposed to have diverse opinions and sometimes they express them robustly. What's the difference between that and what you mean by trolling? You know, how much of that factory output, for example, is what you would call trolling, or is just that the top 10% and the rest of it is conventional political argument?
Some of the paid trolls don't even comment about straight like Putin's or Kremlin's actions. They might talk about just like different topics. For example, some might just say because they have fake profiles on Facebook and Beckett, which is a Russian social media like Facebook, and they might act out as just regular house moms, and who are just saying that, oh, I just baked some cakes, and by the way, Russia is cool. So, of course, it's, you know, but that's the point of trolling, like this paid, organized political trolling, to make it really difficult for anyone to see, is this a real person or is this just like some troll? And it's impossible. Of course, it's really easy to spot some bots which are just distributing 100% similar messages at exact same time. There are many of those everywhere on Twitter. But yeah, of course, it's okay to disagree. I love it when people disagree, and it's really good for everyone to disagree and to challenge other people. But then it's different when if someone disagrees, like and says calls you names, or just is just like after you, or is just libeling you all the time. Then that's different.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to. You mentioned the effect on Finnish public opinion, and obviously you've got Finns have got a long historic, perhaps uncomfortable relationship with Russia, but you know, in some ways many Finns are quite sympathetic as well. Is there any evidence that you can see that it is having an impact on Finnish public opinion, either by intimidating or people becoming more sympathetic to the Kremlin perspective? Perhaps more sceptical about what Wiley says. Sorry, Wiley, the Finnish national broadcaster.
Yes, I had something like 200 stories from Finnish people who had been seeing troll activities in internet and social media, and I was checking every story that I got and following the leads and hints people were sending me, and also asking more information about when they told that they had, for example, some kind of experience that Russian embassy's Twitter page had taken their hashtag, which was originally used to be a little bit critical towards Russia, but then Russian embassy and later even a Russian foreign ministry started to use the same hashtag, but against Ukraine. So, and also checked, just because people were saying that, I went off of social media after this and this trolling, which was documented, happened to me. It was just, that's the evidence. There was just so much stories like that, and I just combined all those stories and checked. And I found these troll comments just everywhere, or not everywhere, but on so many different forums and comment sections of normal media. They are just like copy-pasted and distributed 24/7. And I also interviewed many moderators who said that there is constant, like moderators of normal media, and they said there is just constant flow of even Finnish, not just Finnish language, but also Russian language trolling is targeted at biggest Russian language discussion forum we have in Finland, because we have about 70,000 Russian speakers in Finland.
It's definitely having an impact. Peter, now you've had an interesting life, which you've written about in your book, which is both very disturbing and, dare I say, actually quite an entertaining read as well, in a strange way. It has a sort of thriller-esque quality to it. You've actually worked inside Russia in the media industry in the past. You're now at the Legatum Institute, but how successful has it been internally in terms of the propaganda machine?
Well, actually, I worked in Russia between 2001 2010. I mean, I went there straight after university. I went to film school there, and then ended up working entertainment TV there, which is quite different to what you're looking at today. So I did, I had nothing to do with the news. I did much more insidious information war. I helped bring the reality show to Russia, and sitcoms, and stand-up comedy, and formatted factual entertainment. So that really had very little to do with anything we're talking about. In the book, I do explore a new type of authoritarianism that Putin or Putin's team developed domestically. And you can sum it up in kind of one formula that a very famous Russian media professor kind of coined for me. He basically said, look, if Stalin was 75% violence and 25% propaganda, Putin's the other way around. It's 25% violence and 75% propaganda. TV was actually at the center of this. The first thing that Putin does when he comes to power is take over television. I mean, Putin uses show trials the way Stalin uses show trials, whether it's Khodorkovsky or Pussy Riot. It's a very old tradition, but Putin only needs 3 of them, and then he blasts it through TV to intimidate everyone. Stalin had to do thousands, if not more. So it's a little bit of progression there. Actually, the internet was something they left alone, and they let people live online, and a whole kind of anti-Putin or pro-democracy movement based around a fact-based discourse developed online, and that exploded into the protest 2012, after which the Kremlin goes, oh my God, what have we done? And basically invests a hell of a lot of money into conquering that sphere, the same way the Chinese and the Turks are, so creating troll armies, taking over social media, laws about, if you write something extremist on your Facebook of contact, you get arrested. Extremist is defined as whatever the Kremlin wants that day. So lots and lots. So technical takeover, creating troll army. They actually came to, it's quite funny, this is all hearsay, obviously I have no proof of this, apart from I know people who were in the room, but they came to the biggest Russian sort of search engines and say, can you change your algorithm? Because we keep on getting anti-Putin news at the top of your algorithm. And these guys are like, you can't do that, it doesn't work that way. They're like, oh, okay. And so they just went up and took over all the internet news sites for the Kremlin and made sure that pro-Putin news came top. So that now comes top of the Russian algorithms. So look, they're chucking us stuff at it. There's a great book called The Red Web by Andrei Soldatov, very brave Russian journalist, who goes into the details of it. Like everything the Kremlin does, 50% works, 50% is... No, let me reforganize. 10% works, 80% is bullshitting the Kremlin so you get money from them, and 20% is counterproductive and actually helps the Democrats. That's pretty good sort of, I think, definition.
That's 110%.
That's the kind of figures, that's Putin's approval rating. That's normal in Russia. You want fact-based discourse about Russia, that's ridiculous. Bulgakov is a realist. That's the first thing you realize when you live in Russia. But that then stretches, and this is what I've been looking at Legatum, and I don't know, through some weird backflip of fate, I've moved from making trash TV to helping the EU and the State Department and all these horrible instruments of Western hegemony try to work out what we do about this. And so actually it's worth talking about Jessikka's horrible experience, and her bravery is really incredible in context. So just as in their domestic policy, they use propaganda more than violence, so in their foreign policy and in their theories of war, they also say it can be like largely information war with only a little bit of invasion with some covert troops. What's become known as hybrid war, which is a very controversial term, and we can have lots of discussion with sort of political scientists who are like these theologians, talking about how many angels there are on the head of a pin, trying to define exactly the nature of Russian foreign policy and whether it's new or not. But that's kind of the overall message. And at the base of it is this idea of what they call information psychological war, which is a little bit different to our idea of information war, which is largely cyber warfare. Information psychological war basically says that Russia is under attack from CNN, NGO, the Vatican, the Anglican Church, Jehovah's Witnesses. Everything that we think of as open culture is actually a form of attack, and therefore they have to do it back. And that you can destroy, or not bring to its knees another country without necessarily touching it. That's the key idea. So an example was of Estonia, for example, 2008-ish, I think. There was an attack on Estonia, which was through all these, what we would call sort of non-kinetic, non-military forms. There was a cyber attack, which dislocated their government functions, their media, their banking sector. There was a huge media attack, trolls, media, all saying, oh, look, Estonians are all fascists, they're bullying local Russians. The sort of stuff we've seen, personally on Jessikka or more largely on Ukraine, but really focused. Plus there were riots in the streets with groups you would never be able to prove were sponsored by the Russians, but they would just go to meetings at the Russian embassy every other day. And that was a message sort of to Estonia. You might be in NATO, you might be in the EU, it doesn't matter, we can still get you. You have your Article 5 in NATO, that only defends you from military attack. Yeah? We can get you in another way. We will never invade you, we'll just make you feel like this. I then met with sort of a senior Estonian officials, and I was like, well, how do you react to this? Yeah? And they're like, we're put in a double bind, because if we ignore it, they keep on attacking. If we start screaming about it, then A, sort of people in the West think we're hysterical, and B, the Western media will then start writing, Estonia is next. Estonia is about to be invaded, which destroys Estonia's reputation as a stable country, destroys its investment climate. So this is the thing, with a lot of these information games, they're looking for what Russian theorists call sort of a bit of reflexive control, which is a posh way of saying they're trying to get you to react in a certain way. And often the reaction they want is you to panic, because that makes Russia look really, really big and scary, that makes everyone think you're crazy, and so on and so forth. So you're in this complete and utter double bind about how you react to this and what you do about it. It's not like a usual, we always use this military sort of a language to talk about it, but it's not. These are kind of informational chess games. And Jessica's quite right. Often what the main thing to be is not emotional in your reaction. Understand their strategic aim and attack that, or respond to that, or ignore it. I mean, the strategic aim with Russia is to put out the lights on our reason. The strategic...
The switches at the back.
Yeah, well,
somebody's leaned against the...
This is such a Tintin moment. This is when I get dragged away and get replaced with my twin. Right. And when I start speaking again, it'd be like, Putin is a god. All of you are just Russophobic. So look, they have had a strategy. I think, since Ukraine. And it was a very simple strategy. It was to prove they meant business. When they went into Crimea, when they started to go into East Ukraine, the main thing they had to do was make sure we didn't react militarily. That was the main thing. To say we are really, really, really serious, to intimidate the hell out of everyone. So therefore, they buzz planes over Britain. They make it perfectly clear. They do all these TV programs about nuclear war, saying we're ready to use nuclear arms. And that worked. I mean, we talk about the strategic aim. That worked. I mean, everyone was like, whoa, let's make sure that we don't react over Ukraine. So if that was their aim, and again, I'm guessing, maybe others will disagree. If that was their aim, I think they were successful on a policy level. But, discuss, were they?
And what about internally? I mean, the obvious fact is that, Putin personally at least is still extraordinarily popular, isn't he? Even if people are grumpy about the economy and cynical about corruption and so on, he himself seems still to be, popular internally. There doesn't seem to be. People haven't worked out a sort of ecosystem of, I don't know, resistance or alternative views.
Well, my whole book's about that, so get the book, and I explore that at length. But firstly, look, any kind of opinion polling in authoritarian states, you have to be very skeptical about. A priori, I'm not saying it's not popular, but I'm saying if you just relying on opinion polls, that's a pretty dodgy way to go. I mean, opinion polls depend on choice. I mean, the thing is, do you want Putin to be your president or nobody else? Or do you want Putin to be your president, or are you a traitor? Is kind of the question they're asking. And it's like, yeah, I want Putin to be my president. But listen, the whole point of the Putin system has been to say there is no alternative to Putin, getting rid of any potential opposition, setting up puppet opposition who are ridiculous. So there are debating shows in Russia. If you put on the TV, you'll have a debating show, which looks much better than our debating shows, and kind of as good as the US ones, different people with different opinions. But the difference is that they are all from political parties who are designed, created, and run from the Kremlin, quite openly designed and run from the Kremlin. And the point of them is to give points of view which are so absurd that it makes Putin look good by contrast. So you have crazy right-wing person, crazy left-wing person. You're like, I think I want Putin. And anybody who could be a genuine threat, of course, isn't allowed on TV. So talking about opinion polling in that kind of, environment has to be done with a lot of, many pinches of salt. But then if we go deeper, we can talk about, the appeal of macho authoritarianism. I mean, let's not be naive. We can see in America how appealing macho authoritarianism is. We can see it in lots of places in Europe. Whoever told you that macho authoritarians aren't popular? They're always popular. That's the problem.
Sure. And I want to ask both of you as well. We've been talking more about the kind of, violent and deliberately sort of aggressive, offensive kind of propaganda. But there's also a sort of spectrum, isn't there, that, for example, Russia Today, which looks like CNN or Al Jazeera, has some kind of audience, especially online, in countries like the UK. Do you both see that as part of a spectrum, or do you think that there's quite a difference between that and the more, the troll factories and so on?
No, they're part of the overall concept, and they describe themselves as such. They say that, Russia is under attack, and they say we have to do it back. They're very open about this. They're not saying that they're saying that all news is actually a covert operation. The BBC, CNN, therefore we have to be too. That's always their logic, yeah? Therefore it's okay that we make stuff up. This is war. But look, Russia Today actually is, of the examples I gave, that's a classic example of getting money out of the Kremlin and pissing it up a wall. So look, their viewing figures in the US are so bad they don't even get on the Reuters lists. In Britain they have around 100,000 a week, which is the same as BBC Parliament, which is okay-ish, but neither is it really going to move the dial. So this is all, and then they boost up their numbers very hard. If you've ever done a piece on RT, your editor then gets a letter from RT saying, can you change one thing in your piece? Can you say that we have 300,000 gazillion viewers across the world and the largest amount of YouTube views in history? And the editor does it because they're like, all right, okay, we'll put that in, fine. And then at one point, the editor comes back, he says, is any of this true? They're like, no, those are their figures. So their whole point is to look, to convince the Kremlin, firstly, to give them the next 200 million, which seems to be working. And then if anything, it is then to intimidate us with the idea they have lots of viewers. I mean, really the case for Russia Today is that they're a laughable, waste of money.
But I wonder if it's had a slightly different, you described the propaganda offensive as being, really geopolitical, trying to sort of destabilise a state like Estonia and so on. But I wonder if there's also an impact which is partly picking up on what you said about people within Finland starting to join in, that in a more subtle way that it just creates a kind of relativism where people say, well, actually, the Putin point of view is just another point of view. You can't trust Western media. Look at the lies over the build-up to the war in Iraq. Look at Fox News. That's just as terrible. So that there's a kind of equivalence. I wonder if there's something more sort of subtle going on in terms of, they don't trust you anymore. They don't trust mainstream journalists anymore. So they're not so bothered if Russia today is lying.
That's one of their key strategies and arguments, that always if you start a conversation about Russia or Kremlin's actions, they are saying that, yeah, but look what you said in Iraq, and West is not innocent, and it's just like so weird because it's called whataboutism, and do we really have to talk about like 10-year-old stuff when a new war is started, and why can't we just talk about this now? And also one of their key strategies is to talk about mainstream media. I mean, what is this mainstream media? There is media that is proper and who do journalism, and then there is media who is not in any way involved with doing journalism, only involved in doing propaganda and seemingly journalism. So that's just what they're always saying. They have political goals, and for those goals they want to make proper media, proper journalism look bad with any means, and they have just no limitations in what they are willing and able to say about not just Western journalism, but also journalists who do it.
Yeah. Would people like to ask any questions or make any comments? Anybody got anything there? Anybody else? Just so I can see where people are. Oh, loads of you. Okay, right. If the microphone goes into that group there, we can pick it up there. Thank you.
Hi. So I have a question to Jessikka. Firstly, I think that's very, very impressive how you persevered, having been sort of harassed and hounded in the online sphere. But I think it's even more impressive that having been through this experience, you also have gone into the troll house, or you wanted to investigate the troll house as well. So if you could tell us a little bit, or maybe compare the two experiences, and whether, which one of them was more intimidating.
I'm sorry, which
two
one?
Experiences?
Sorry. So the two experiences, the obviously online sphere,
Okay.
and being sort of harassed in the online sphere, and the actual troll house. So as far as I understand, you've physically gone and spoken to some of the trolls or journalists.
Yeah.
So which one of the experiences was more intimidating for you? If you could compare it.
I'm not sure if I understand this question, but when I went to Troll House, it was normal investigative journalism. It's not intimidating for me. Maybe, or I know that it was intimidating for the trolls and their bosses who were working there, because later on I found out, because one Russian journalist was at that time infiltrated to work there as a troll, but actually she was just gathering information there and published everything when she left. And she told me that while me and my colleagues were there outside and taking pictures and filming and everything, the bosses and everyone was inside and saying, oh my God, here is some Finnish journalist, and they had started to hate us so much. So it was intimidating for them. But yeah, about this harassment, yeah, that has been really intimidating. I mean, I have gotten a text message from some person who claimed to be my father, who has been dead like 20 years. And he says that he is alive still and that he's observing me. So that's, if something is really intimidating, that. And then also, oh yeah, well, you can look just online, but there's just all kinds of stories about me online. But yeah, it's just stories. I try to look at it as if it's not happening to me, because they have created this whole like hyper reality image of me. So I think that's not me. That's just some girl who looks like me and has same name and has some troll activities and seems to have really interesting life, because she is a NATO information expert drug dealer. So yeah, it's sometimes it's more easy to look at it as outsider.
So let's very quickly just put your hands up if you want to ask a question. Now quickly just zoom around. Go ahead. Just
Hi, so this is for
just one
Jessikka.
sentence.
You've just talked about the one tactic that you used, which was disassociating yourself from your own personality. But earlier on, you talked about how your audience actually supported you during the trolling attacks. Can you be a bit more specific about what that support was and how it helped you?
Okay, stop that answer. Just take a couple of others just quickly there.
Can I ask
And
about denial of service in Ukraine? Just before Christmas, they had a power failure. Their main electric system went down. Do you think this is of any significance?
Okay, and then Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Peter, did you see any evidence that Russia today is creating secondary networks of support media? Like, are they setting up phony citizens groups that quote them all the same time? Are these like front groups that fight in the street creating their own media and amplifying the same messages?
Okay. Nobody else?
Could I just it links onto that. It was just what other countries you've noticed this happening in as well. So Finland, you mentioned Estonia, Finland. I've been interested in kind of what's been going on in Germany as well in relation to the refugees.
Okay. So very quickly, guys, do you want to just Jessikka first and then Peter?
About the support, well, people send me a lot of support messages. They even call me, support phone calls. This is also a very widely known issue in Finland, because I made it public every time something really bad happened. And even when the worst attack happened, it was on February, and troll activists dig out one old court fine of 300 euros. I was in the beginning of 2000, I had problem and I was using drugs, so I got fined. So the trolls made it drug dealer horrible stories. So then even Finnish whole media just woke up to the problem, because they noticed how I was being slaughtered in this fake media, and they made like was it 22 chief editors of Finland, like proper media editors. They put out a common statement, which they normally never do, and they said that they are protecting all their journalists from outside threats, and they have had enough of watching how journalists are being attacked, and they also were stating against fake media. So that my case, so it's kind of good news is that along with the trolling, there has become so much like public knowledge about this. So because the trolls and activists use so disgusting methods, now almost every Finn knows how bad this information warfare and this is.
Okay, Peter, do you want to answer this other one?
Yeah, I mean, I know the cases you're talking about regarding kind of secondary repeaters of Kremlin disinformation. There's a guy over there, Grisha Osmolov. He knows everything about this. He's really good. Go and ask him. But secondly, there's two really important points here. The first one is technical. We actually there's a lot of discussion sort of in the US, among donors, among in the EU. What do we do about this? And the thing I say, if you're going to spend money on one thing, can we please have a series of analysis centers that start looking at this regularly, strategically, with the latest sort of data, big data crunching? Because at the moment, somebody might go and do a bit of research and try to find out, or a journalist tries to do something. There's no regular research on any of this. And if there's one thing we should do, is really start doing that regularly and investing in it. And that plus target audience analysis to really understand how these narratives are working or not. I mean, I think that's been very clear from today. Everyone's trying this. Nobody really understands the effects. So a lot of the time, the Kremlin seems to be shooting itself in the foot. We should encourage that. So that's the technical thing. The other one is more sort of philosophical, which is, I suppose, I'm not very good at this sort of philosophy stuff, but I think it's the difference between causation and correlation. So the Dutch referendum recently, there's a referendum in Holland which was all about getting rid of the association agreement with the EU, of Ukraine with the EU. The people who started it don't care about Russia, they don't care about Ukraine, they just hate the EU, and they were using the association agreement with the EU as a tool with which to hit sort of their own government. Once they started, though, Russian propaganda piled in. They used a hell of a lot of talking points from Russian. I don't want to say propaganda is too abstract. Russian disinformation. The MH17 had been shot down by NATO, Ukraine, Zionist Masons. That Ukrainians are all fascists. So they used a lot of the talking points. They used a lot of the materials from Kremlin disinformation sources. And then the Kremlin just sent over a lot of think tank people who spread lies, a lot of journalists who aren't really journalists, but do other things who spread lies. So the Kremlin got involved, but it certainly wasn't caused by the Kremlin. So how do we go about measuring, that kind of like little delta between causation and correlation? Do we react to it at all? Should the counter of campaign even have mentioned the Kremlin? Maybe we should have just focused on what people really cared about, which was their relationship with the EU. So we're in kind of, it's very different to the Cold War when, the Kremlin had a particular point of view and it was blasting it out. Communism is great. Now they just go with existing tensions, whatever they might be, around immigration, around the EU, and try to just fan the flames. That's much harder to counter. Maybe one shouldn't counter it. Maybe one just ignores them. But I think we need to think in a much more kind of strategic way about that.
Great. We're going to stop there. I thought that was really interesting. Bit depressing, but also very inspiring.
You're easily depressed. You should never look at Eastern Europe.
I was a journalist, but especially inspiring. Jessikka, the fantastic work that you're doing. Congratulations. Go and have some lunch. You're going to have a wonderful afternoon as well. So enjoy yourselves, and thanks very much to my two guests.